standing with two of his disciples, and he watched Jesus walk by. He said, "Behold the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard what he said and followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following him and said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which translated means teacher, "where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and you will see." So they went and saw where Jesus was staying, and they stayed with him that day. It was about 4 p.m, and Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, was one of the two, who heard John and followed Jesus. And he first found his own brother Simon and told him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ. Then he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You will be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
First of all, I want to say, obviously, a lot of you are not Packer fans. You don't really care. But I just thought I'd mention that. In today's first reading, we learn how Samuel is sound asleep when the Lord calls him. So it should be of no surprise to anyone that God would call out to him when his whole life had been dedicated to God. Imagine if we had the same privilege of growing up as Samuel had, and as a young boy lived in the temple. His surroundings were a constant reminder that God was with him. And living in the temple helped Samuel become a person of faith. For all his life, he lived under the leadership of prophet Eli, and he slept by the Ark of the Covenant, which was the very ark that contained the staff of Moses and the 10 Commandments and other important artifacts. But knowing God had spoken often to many prophets over the years was no surprise to Samuel. He just never expected the Lord to speak to him. So when he hears the voice calling out to him, he just assumes it's the prophet Eli. So he runs to him and says, "Here I am, you called me." Eli, having been awakened from sleep, tells Samuel, "I did not call you, go back to sleep." Now the Lord calls Samuel a second time, and a third. Eli understands it must be the Lord calling him. So he tells Samuel to return to the temple, go back to sleep. He's wakened again. Respond by saying, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Eli helped Samuel to learn how to listen for God's voice. But it's more than just listening that God expects from him. God is calling Samuel into a deeper relationship with him. To have any kind of relationship with God, we have to be open to one. And it begins with listening, but also commands our responding. You and I need to learn how to listen as well. If someone is requesting something of us, chances are our hearing may be somewhat impaired, because we don't always want to do something we're being asked to do. But if we're listening for an answer for something we requested, we can hear a little better. But one's ability to hear someone should never depend on whether or not it's for our benefit, but on our willingness to listen out of the kindness of our heart. This is what helps us establish good relationships. We hope to have a good relationship with Jesus. We not only have to be willing to listen to him, but we have to be willing to respond to him, to do whatever he asks of us. In today's gospel, John the Baptist is doing with his followers what Eli had done to Samuel. He's teaching them. John is standing with his disciples as he watched Jesus walk by, and he draws the attention to Jesus by proclaiming, "Behold the Lamb of God." And upon hearing John's pronouncement, the disciples followed Jesus. Noticing the following him, Jesus asked, "What are you looking for?" Then as Jesus says to them, "Come, follow me." And they follow Jesus to see where he's staying, and they stay with him the whole day. Now Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, runs to tell his brother, "We have found the Messiah," and leads Simon to Jesus, in which case he gives him the name Peter, which means rock. There's a great difference between meeting someone and encountering someone. People can live in the same house and eat at the same table or share the same conversations and never really encounter that person. To encounter someone means we give of ourselves totally to them. We open up our hearts to them. We, in a sense, awaken a light or joy in them. And we can easily let people pass by without making any contact with them. But if we want a relationship with them, then we need to let it happen with our loved ones and with God to have that connection to Him. Samuel's heart was formed throughout his entire life to have a relationship with God. Followers of John had been searching for the Redeemer, but they didn't stop them when they found him, but they kept pursuing him until he asked what they wanted. And they said, "Where do you live?" And he said, "Come." You and I also want Jesus to say to us, "Come." People can sit right next to each other and engage in conversation, never really get to know them. The same can happen in our relationships with Christ. We allow our prayers just to become words of repetition or not words from our heart, or moments of emptiness instead of moments of reverence. I recently read that there are two basic stages for the call of discipleship: the invitation and the time of discernment. Discipleship is not something we just take upon ourselves. It's an invitation from God, often in the form of an inner call or an inspiration. Our interest in the faith often comes through a person or an event, which becomes the means of how God is calling us. We need to be attentive to the call and to the promptings within our heart if we hope to respond to the call. The second stage is a time of discernment. Most of us need help in recognizing those moments when the Spirit of God is breaking through. We turn to a community, since it is from the community that we learn how to test the Spirit of God, perhaps through religious leaders or guides or friends or loved ones who know the workings of God in their own lives, as did Eli and John the Baptist. When you're called to be disciples, we're called into something greater than ourselves. We're called within a community of believers that have already been touched by God. Cardinal Ratzinger, then Pope Benedict XVI, said, "Becoming Christians or disciples is something we attain for ourselves. It's not something we attain for ourselves, but something we attain with the assistance of others. Being a Christian or a disciple is something we achieve within a community by serving others, by being available to them. We are called to help each other. In your relationships, your spouse and your family helps you come to know each other, helps you understand how to grow in your faith." I came across a story of a woman who, at 80 years old, had been married 4 times. She outlived 3 of her husbands. She mentioned how she believed that each marriage had contributed greatly for the betterment of her life. Someone had asked her if it was possible that she said the first man she married was a banker, and how in the early years of marriage she was able to become betterly financially secure. Her next husband was an entertainer, who helped her establish friendships. Her third husband was a preacher, who helped her establish a better relationship with God. And her last husband was a funeral director, and helped her for her final days. So her summary was, "I married 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go."